Good evening. My name is Emily Robbins, and I am going to show you guys how to make some bath bombs. I'm actually recording this for my class that's going on this evening, and wanted to kind of give you some tips and also some encouragement if you've never made these before. I made some earlier today, and one of them's wonky. Kind of happens when you work with citric acid. So I'm gonna turn this around. What's in bath bombs. So I've got citric acid, Arm & Hammer baking soda, and of course some Epsom salt that you want in your bath. I'm using jojoba oil and a little bit of witch hazel that I have already pre-poured into a spray bottle that we will be using. And then tonight we are scenting our bath bombs with a little bit of peppermint. And of course, some Stress Away. Who doesn't love Stress Away? Who doesn't need some Stress Away? Okay, so I'm going to, so that you guys can see what I'm doing. Whoop, while I do it. That didn't work out so well, huh? Okay, so what we're gonna do is add a cup of baking soda. I'm just going to put it right here in this bowl. So half a cup here and a full cup, and then half a cup of citric acid. It is extraordinarily fine. There's no way you can tell in the video, but it's a weird texture. It's a lot finer than I expected. Citric acid is what you put in bath bombs that makes them fizz, so you definitely want to have that in there. You could actually make a bath bomb with just baking soda and citric acid. You don't need the Epsom salt, but the Epsom salt adds the magnesium, which if you're in the bath wanting some, just needing some relaxing, knowing you need some magnesium, it's a good thing to add. So that was actually supposed to be a quarter of a cup. Just a half. That's okay. So the recipe calls for a cup of baking soda, a half a cup of citric acid, and a quarter cup of Epsom salt. But again, we're working towards how the bath salts feel when we're done with them, more than even exact ingredients. So now I'm going to mix this all up completely, and you want to make sure that the citric acid and the baking soda and the Epsom salt are completely mixed together. So I tend to mash it all together, if you can see what I'm doing. Otherwise you'll have clumps of citric acid and clumps of Epsom salts in certain places, and you want it to be as completely mixed up as possible. Alright, now I'm going to use this handy dandy spoon that I've got here. On this end I've got a little teaspoon, so we're going to add actually a teaspoon and a half of jojoba oil. Now this is what makes the bath bombs just absolutely moisturizing and wonderful. And so I've poured that in, and now I'm going to mash that in. So I'm mashing in the oil. You can use, the recipe that I'm following actually calls for fractionated coconut oil. I prefer jojoba oil on my skin, so that's why I'm making them with jojoba oil. Olive oil works. Sweet almond oil, unless you're allergic to nuts, then don't do that. What else works? I don't know. What other carrier oils? Oh, there's an apricot oil that I know would be good. So any of those would work. All right, so there's 1 teaspoon. I'm going to do another little half. And then keep mashing it in. Again, if I don't mix this in, the citric acid will react pretty quickly to something that's in there that's liquid, and starts fizzing up, so you want to make sure it gets mashed in really well. Okay, then I do my essential oils next. So the recipe calls for 12 drops of Stress Away. Stress Away has lime, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Notice I'm putting it all over the bowl, not just one location. Sorry, I can't count and talk at the same time. It has lime oil and copaiba oil, and has some vanilla extract in it. And then It also has lavender. I always forget that it has lavender in that. It's a very good relaxing oil, so great for bath bombs. And then we'll add 8 drops of peppermint. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you can hear noise in the background, my dog is like literally playing right around here. She's pretty cute. Okay, so again, mashing this in. When you're doing a bath bomb, I think I already said this once, you're working towards an overall how something feels. So notice I'm using a really big bowl. I want a bowl that I can really like mix this all up in and move it around and not feel like it's going to like go over the edge or that I have to worry about it making a big mess. Oh my gosh, y'all, this smells so good. I don't think I would have put those two things together, so I'm glad that the recipe called for that. Peppermint and Stress Away. I often use lavender and eucalyptus. Those are probably my 2 favorite. And if you're going to make these for a kid, I would say absolutely use lavender. That would be good for relaxing and calming them down, but also really good for their skin and not in any way, it shouldn't harm them in any way. Okay, so again, going for an overall what it looks like. The end result you want is something that sticks together kind of like damp snow or damp sand, and right now it's not sticking together at all. And now my hand is a mess. So like I said, I put witch hazel in the spray bottle ahead of time. So what I'm going to do is spray and stir at the same time. So I'm going to do like, it's not spraying really well. There, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So you don't want to just pour some water in here because that citric acid will react right away. So you're spraying it in and then you are stirring as quick as you can, and you want to kind of incorporate it as much as possible. I do want to show you that when I normally make it, I actually use a squeeze bottle like this, and I mix the oil, my carrier oil and my witch hazel together in this and add a little bit at a time. This recipe called for a spray bottle, and I thought I'd give it a try. And it worked pretty well when I made them earlier. So again, about 4 good sprays and then stir. Okay, and in a minute I'm going to do the hand test again. So it's holding together just a little bit better, but it's still falling apart. So not yet. And this is where it's so hard because honestly, if you make these, there's times where one more spray is one too many, and you just don't know until the end. So at this point, you might want to just do 1 spray at a time. Sorry about that. I don't have a fancy cell phone holder, so I'm making do with a bag and a mold for soaps. Okay, so I'm holding it. Oh, it's getting a little bit better. Actually, it's still crumbling a little bit. So I'm going to do 2 more. 1, 2, and 1 over there. And that's probably going to be all that I do. If you put them in your molds and it doesn't stick well in there, then you can always pull them back out, toss it in the bowl, add a little bit more witch hazel, and then stick them back in the mold. There we go. See what we're looking for? We want something that holds together really well. Okay, just incorporate that completely. And then the recipe called for 60 millimeter molds, ornament molds. I bought mine at Michael's last year after Christmas. All of these are on sale because they figured nobody wanted ornament molds. So I bought like 30 of them. And I have different sizes. So I have this size, and then I have this one, which is a little bit bigger. And what I do is I take one and I just set it in the bowl, and then I take the other one and I just start packing it in. And you want to pack it until it's almost too much, so a little bit over the edge. And then you take the other side and do the same thing. Pack it in. Squeeze it down, and then I take both of them together and I just kind of mash them till they close. And then you literally take this and set it to the side for about, I would say, an hour. And then I normally go back and I actually twist. I'm gonna go ahead and do it with this one. I twist because it will work, see? And then I let it dry for overnight with half of it still on, half the ornament on, but half off so it's able to dry. And so I'm gonna go ahead and fill up the rest of these after I get off of this. I do wanna show you that sometimes I also just make a half size if you wanna make a smaller one. I made these earlier today, see if I can get this out. So we've got a disc more than a full ball. It's another great way to maybe make it a little less for your kids. And then I do want to show you my wonky one. So if you add too much liquid, what ends up happening is the side that stays in the ornament while you're letting it dry looks beautiful. So I could have just shown you this side. And then the other side keeps growing. Now, this will still work, but this isn't necessarily something you would want to give somebody as a DIY gift. So this will be mine. I also do want you to know that one of the other fun things I do when I sell these in like craft fairs is I take a little bit of lavender. So I've got lavender over here in a bowl, dried. It smells really good. And since there's lavender in the Stress Away, I thought that was a good fit. So I put just a little bit in the bottom, and then I pack the bath salt, or the bath bomb on top of it. So then, you can see here, the lavender's on one side. So when it dries, there's a little bit of lavender in the bottom of it. Okay, so I hope that helps. Tips, like I said, don't over wet this. You want it to stick together. And you don't want to be too moist. Also, I highly recommend using a hard mold versus like a mold for candy in the silicone kind. So I hope that's been helpful. And otherwise, I hope you guys have a great evening, and thank you so much for joining me.